Media in the 2010s and 2020s is less diverse than it was in the 90s and 2000s. So after the push to be more inclusive and diverse in media, shows, especially in animation, got less diverse. This is a tall claim to make, so let me justify it a bit. Let's go back a couple of decades, to the 2000s and the 90s, and I'll give you a moment to process that I accurately said the 2000s is a couple of decades ago. You cool? We had shows that were all kinds of diverse back then. Shows like Hey Arnold, Recess, Class of 3000 had people in the main cast from a variety of backgrounds. Some shows cared more than others, of course. Hey Arnold was especially good at this. Harold was Jewish, and there were a couple of episodes going into his heritage. Speaking of that, there was the Rugrats Hanukkah special. Pelswick was a show by a disabled man about a disabled kid. Mucha Lucha and El Tigre had Hispanic main characters. Jake Long and Juniper Lee had Asian main characters. Static Shock, Proud Family, and the Boondocks had African American main characters. Things were so integrated back then that no one seemed to care. Nowadays, when Turning Red has an Asian Canadian protagonist, we need to shout it to the rooftops, because it's apparently the most unique thing ever, and no one else ever does this at all. Speaking of which, Disney couldn't make a new show about an African American family, so they needed to bring back an old one from the 2000s, The Proud Family. Both Braceface and The Simpsons had episodes about homosexuality, and shows like Lloyd in Space and Whatever Happened to Robot Jones dealt with non-binary gender identity. Now, I want to be clear, a lot of these shows did a really good job, but a lot did fall on their face. Braceface's gay character has aged poorly. Lloyd in Space's episode ties in gender identity with sexual attraction. Shaolin Showdown has a cast from all over the world that is super white in skin tone, except Omi, who speaks with an over-the-top Asian accent and is literally colored bright yellow.
Oh, I can see through walls and buildings and cars and garbage cans and trees.
Voiced by a white Canadian woman who, says things on Twitter that a person who voiced an Asian character with bright yellow skin and an over-the-top Asian accent probably should not be saying, ever, not just not on Twitter, just in general. When it's done a lot, you get things in all kinds of different ways, and some of them work out really well. Others don't. There's even more to it when you want to include metaphors into the mix. Cyborg from Teen Titans' struggle with being part machine comes across as a good metaphor for disability. The Mask from Courage the Cowardly Dog goes into some super dark subject matter about domestic abuse and prejudice. Like back in the day, these shows, for kids and adults, tended to show everyone living in harmony. Apu is a good friend of The Simpsons, and a character we were supposed to root for as he got his citizenship, a part of the immigrant experience that's not exactly well shown in today's media. Because today, this same exact character is apparently the wrong one way to show an Indian character. In 2010, we got Friendship is Magic, which had 6 female characters, all with a range of diverse personalities. In 2012, we got the show Legend of Korra, which had a female character that had one of those personalities. The tough, abrasive, doesn't need any help, always gets her way character. And that's the kind we stuck with forever after. So many characters in the 2010s and 2020s just boiled down to Korra again. Hello,
Tila.
It's the same picture. These two characters are not different. I don't have many examples, but I must have seen Tila's exact haircut 20 million times by now. When it comes to child characters, we went from an optimistic, happy, kooky girl, to an optimistic, happy, kooky girl, to an optimistic, happy, kooky girl, to an optimistic, happy, kooky girl. Like, do you expect me to believe that the people who wanted more female characters wanted the same female character over and over again? Because that's exactly what we're getting. Let's go back to the 90s. We'll use just one show. Hey Arnold. You had the tsundere girl, the smart girl, the rich snobby girl, the bully with the soft center, the perfectly sweet girl, the overachieving favorite, the woman at her wit's end with her husband, and the woman who has lost her marbles, some of which are more fleshed out than the sisters in The Loud House. What peeves me the most is how corporations are using this as a selling point. Like, they throw a bone and demand you give them all of your money because they're being supportive. Like the gay wink and nudge in the live-action Beauty and the Beast that they remove overseas because they want to make money in other countries that are not as accepting of gay rights.
Well, there's no one as easy to poster as you. Too much?
Yep.
I will believe that Disney gives the remotest shit about equality when they stop doing things like this, and not a second before. Hey Arnold couldn't say it at the time, but Mr. Simmons, an integral character of the show, was gay, which was directly alluded to in the show. And this is ignoring adult cartoons like The Simpsons, which was once upon a time able to talk about homosexuality without it being a one-note Smithers joke. And that's because of the way the diversity dollars chase nowadays. If you don't make this type of character in this specific way every single time, we will complain and ask they be removed on Twitter, even though all this does is just create tokens. Like, there's probably a reason that they canceled the Boondocks remake, despite the original series being made by an African-American man, because the show probably would not fly today. Once again, despite being made by an African-American man and deeply ingrained in black culture. Personally, I believe that if Disney wants to get brownie points for putting an LGBT character in their film at this point, they need to be the main character and advertised as such, globally. We have a word for this. It's called rainbow capitalism, and it's not a good thing. It's blatantly exploitative, and most of the LGBT community hates it to this day. And yet, it's abused again and again because it's really turning a profit now.